This is the Television Enthusiast Podcast, The Weekly Set.
Episode 32, recorded November 5th, 2015.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set. This is the TV Enthusiast Podcast, episode 32, recorded on November 5th, 2015. Well, depending on time zones, November 5th or November 6th. It's November 6th for Will right now, so that's just when we record it. So this should be up on Friday, November 6th. It should be available for everybody. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about some of the recent news for the last 2 weeks, because our last podcast was kind of a Halloween-focused one. We're going to talk about some TV shows we've been watching since the last 2 weeks or so, and then do a little recap about what's kind of coming up in the next week. We'll kind of go over that. So let's get started. I am your host. My name is Tyson. Joining me today, as always, are Will.
Hello.
And Kat.
Hi.
Okay, so let's start with the news. So I have a list here of news that we're going to go over. First off, Netflix says that they're going to start funding anime and Bollywood movies. This is interesting. We're going to get Netflix original Bollywood.
Oh, because Netflix wants to make themselves, as relevant as possible.
Well, they just want to make everything. They decide they're a content player, and that's where their main focus is going to be. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, that's what Netflix is now. It's less about like a place to watch old TV shows or old movies and stuff, and it's more about a place to watch the stuff that Netflix makes.
Right. Well, it's basically Netflix wants to expand into worldwide, and so they want to start making more local content for the other parts of the world that they are in, and it's just about having original content for that market, just like they have original content for us, and that's basically the strategy there.
So I'm not too big on Bollywood myself, but right. I am a huge anime fan. I know you are as well, Will. So
I mean, it's not even known if we're going to get the Bollywood content. That just might be. I think
we will. Netflix, if they own it internationally, I'm sure they'll put it out here.
Right.
Because there's a large and growing population of Indian Americans in America, and British people from Indian origin, and other places where they have Indians that have immigrated, so it makes sense that they would pull it over, especially if they own the international right, which it seems to be the case, that they'd be funding the actual production, not just licensing it over here. The anime thing is what I'm more interested in, though, because they've funded a few shows, but it's kind of been a little frustrating when they do get involved in a show. They recently got the U.S. rights for the 7 Deadly Sins, which is an anime series, and that series aired in Japan quite a while ago. And normally, for me, and I don't know about for you, Will, but we watched the simulcast on Crunchyroll. Well, we didn't get 7 Deadly Sins until this last month.
Oh, I see.
And that came out half a year ago in Japan. So if Netflix hadn't been involved, we'd be watching it episode by episode as it had come out way long ago.
Right. I think if Netflix is gonna start getting into the anime game, they need to have a simulcast option, like Crunchyroll and Funimation and all the anime streaming services are doing, because if Netflix wants to get into that and be serious about it, then they need to have that option.
Well, I think what's interesting here is if they're funding it from the ground level, for Japan as well as the United States, then when they release it, it's going to be international, just released across all the whole season. Which is interesting, because there's never been an anime that's done that before.
Right. Oh, yeah. If they did that, that'd be super awesome.
So that's kind of what's interesting about that. So, hey, this is Netflix trying to take over the world. Nothing new. They've been doing this. I mean, look what they're doing with Marvel. Everyone thought that was just absolutely insane when they announced that, and we're starting to slowly kind of get into what they've been doing with that, and it's great. But, man, they're just changing the way we look at TV, which brings us to our next story. Now, this is TBS, not Netflix, not any other streaming thing, but it just shows the effect that Netflix has had on other channels that a channel would ever do what TBS is going to do. So TBS is they're working on a new TV series, a new comedy series with Rashida Jones in it from Parks and Recreation and The Office, in which she plays a female police officer, like a lone wolf LAPD cop. Well, anyways, that's not what's interesting about this comedy series. What's interesting is that the entire first season is going to be released in a marathon. So they're going to marathon the entire first season starting on January 17th. It's 10 episodes of the first season. And then the next week, they're starting season 2.
Holy cow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's just nuts. This is the kind of thing that would have never happened if Netflix hadn't jumped into the game and started changing the way we look at the way TV is released.
Yeah, seriously.
So yeah, this is crazy.
Good, though. Like, television has been kind of defined by the network broadcast model for so long. I think it's great that it's really starting to be challenged in so many substantial ways. I mean, for instance, the length of a TV episode is determined by, our hour, half hour minus ads. But really, if you move it to other platforms, it doesn't need that. So
yeah. It can be in completely different increments. Shows can go as long as they need for an episode rather than what they're structured for, because, I mean, some shows, like an episode will feel rushed, and sometimes it feels like it's dragging. So when it's on a stream platform, there's no reason that, one episode can't be 40 minutes while another one is 25.
Exactly.
They could do whatever they want as long as they're delivering enough content.
I'd
It's
also
fine.
be curious to see someone ever challenge the notion of there being episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not have it be a continuous longer story? Although at the same time, I don't know, that it could have its own pitfalls, but I mean, the whole notion of the way it's currently structured was, I think, for the ease of early television on the networks to accommodate for ads and things like that. So.
Well, I think when you get into varied length episodes, you start to become more like chapters of a book. Because, if you're reading a book, one chapter could be 3 pages and the next could be 25.
Uh-huh.
It's a chapter is as long as it needs to have that piece of the story encapsulate. It isn't like, okay, you've covered this many pages, now start the next chapter. It's all about what part of the story is encapsulated in that chapter. Uh-huh. So I think we're getting really close to that point, where it already kind of feels like that when, a Netflix series comes out, it does kind of feel like a novel. People always use the term like a really long movie, but I think it kind of feels like a novel because you have it broken up into episodes. It is like chapters of a novel. The only thing is that they've mostly been in that same kind of structure. They've mostly been, 45 to 50 minutes, an episode or something. But if we start getting to the point where they're diversifying that and going like, oh, well, this episode's 30 minutes and this next episode's an hour and a half,
Well, and it's also becoming more like a novel in that more often it's continuous storyline.
Yeah. Definitely.
Whereas plenty of television is more like a collection of short stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or like they do the famous A-B structure, which is like you have your A plot, which is the kind of underlying one, and you have your B plot, which is your episode-to-episode story. Novels don't really take that direction. So it would be kind of interesting to see how TV is affected by this going on, I mean, it really, a lot of people are looking towards like movies and the way TV is going and stuff, like saying, oh, these really long movies. But like I said, I think the bigger one to look at is the structure the books take and using that as an idea. Because if you think about books and television, they kind of are connected in a way because a lot of old books used to come out serialized as chapters. Like, individual chapters would be released one time instead of a whole book released at once. That's the way books used to be released.
That's right.
So this is like, it's kind of like it's going, like it has this weird backwards route, where TV and novels have this kind of weird connection like that. So that's really interesting, and I think it's cool that TBS is doing this. It's really different. I don't know how smart of a strategy it is, especially for a comedy series, which aren't, usually as bingeable as, a serialized drama or something is, where you're really invested in the characters and stuff. So, and releasing it not as a streaming so that you binge it, but you're binging it on somebody else's schedule, basically. I want to see how that plays out. I mean, hopefully they have something planned out with a streaming partner or with their own services, but their own services require you to have a cable subscription, so maybe they work something out with Hulu, I don't know, where people can, maybe they watched a few episodes but didn't want to keep watching the marathon. Maybe they don't have a DVR or something, and, there needs to be other options, I feel.
Uh-huh.
Right, definitely.
Let's get on to some casting news. So first up, Emma Caulfield, who played Anya in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, is set to appear in the 100th episode of Once Upon a Time, reprising her role as the Blind Witch. I told Will about this before the podcast. He was like, who? What? And he had to look it up and go oh, okay, yeah, I know this character.
I remember her. For the record, I think they're having everyone return, because they've already announced, I think David Anders is supposed to return, and Giancarlo Esposito is returning. So from what and Robbie Kay is returning as Peter Pan. So I think they're just getting everyone they can for that one.
You mean people from the town who exist in the town, but who completely
disappeared because the actors got roles on different shows.
They went upstairs with the basketball.
Might be coming back.
Yeah. They went upstairs with the basketball, and you never saw them again.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think they're getting everyone that they can, even though a fair amount of them have commitments to other shows now.
Like Jiminy Cricket, he just completely disappears from the show after being a huge part of the first season.
Right?
Yeah.
So the guy who plays, I don't know if either of you played Mass Effect, but the guy who plays Jiminy Cricket was Caden in Mass Effect, and I can never stop associating him with that role.
Oh my god! Now that you mention it, it totally clicks. I did not realize that at all.
It's he's not Jiminy Cricket to me. He's Caden Malenko.
He's Caden, yeah, right? Oh my god. Oh, and Cinderella, who had one episode and disappeared.
Yep. I think she showed up later because she'd had a baby and she was in a baby support group or something.
Oh yeah. I think she had one cameo later and a tiny cameo in Once Upon a Time in Wonderland.
Yeah.
That was it.
So, in other news with Emma Caulfield as well, she has also been cast in Supergirl. So.
That's right. I saw that. That's exciting.
Yeah, so that's good news. And we got some other strong female-centered comic book-based TV show news as well, which is we got 2 castings for Agent Carter. Kurtwood Smith from That 70s Show and RoboCop. He played the father that always called his son dumbass on That 70s Show. Most people recognize him.
I remember him from Dead Poets Society.
That's right, yeah. And Ken Marino, who's typically in comedy roles, he was in Veronica Mars. People who listen to this might know him. He was the other PI that.
Yeah, that's right. I'm guessing he's going to play a more serious role, maybe?
He's playing a villain. So he's playing one of the villains, which is, at first you're kind of thrown off because it's he's kind of more of a charismatic, kind of funny guy. But that's, exactly what I want for a villain on a show like that. I want a charismatic villain, So I'm actually really excited about that.
Yeah.
And he is kind of an imposing figure, too. He's a big guy. He's just, you always take him so lightly because he's always playing comedic roles and stuff. But, I could see him being similar to, a Damien Dark on Arrow, which we won't talk about because I just remembered we can't talk about that. So. But just in the sense
that Arrow, you've ruined everything for me.
Just in the sense that it's a fun but larger character, a larger actor that can kind of straddle that line. So it'll be cool to kind of see what they do with him. Is he just going to be some agent that's, kind of in the sexist side of the story against Agent Carter? Is he going to be, connected to Hydra or something? We'll have to see.
Or connected to, because they're going to 1940s, late 40s, early 50s Hollywood.
Yeah, so there's lots of possibilities.
So I'm excited, but mostly I'm just excited for Agent Carter.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm excited about the whole thing. Yeah, but that's a cool role to see Ken Marino in. We haven't really seen him in a role like that, so
yeah,
that'll be interesting. Also, we have some remake news, series that are being remade or movies being remade here. Greatest American Hero. This was a popular series in the 80s. It was kind of it was based on the popularity of like Superman at the time, really, was what spurred it on. Most people would probably recognize it from its theme song that became kind of more famous than the show itself, which is the beginning lines are, "Believe it or not, I'm walking on air." If you've heard that, that's Greatest American Hero. That's getting a remake, and it totally makes sense, because when that came out, that was right around the time Superman was in like its huge popularity with the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, but you also had, like Marvel hitting TV with the Incredible Hulk and Thor, and then you had like Wonder Woman on TV and all these. It kind of came in that same era, and so we're like in the new, like the even larger like superhero era right now. So it makes sense for something like this to come back. That's kind of a little bit self-aware, more so than the other shows. Plays it more on like the kind of idea of like an everyman gaining like powers, a lighter take. So
right.
Well, that'll be interesting. It'll probably be maybe a good balance too, because even the lighter stuff like Flash and Supergirl, they still take themselves pretty seriously, and I'm guessing this one doesn't take itself quite as seriously.
Right, I'm guessing.
Definitely not. The original didn't, so hopefully the new one doesn't.
Me of the Tick.
It's less intentionally funny than the Tick. It's more like just kind of like buddy funny. I don't know.
Speaking of Tick, they need to bring the Tick back.
There was talk about that a while ago.
Yeah, Amazon was supposedly doing it, and nothing happened.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. Some of that stuff moves slow, so we'll have to see. That could be something that just pops up out of nowhere, like the full season's up tomorrow.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
So who knows? We also have Kat, are you a fan of the His Dark Materials books, like The Golden Compass?
One more thing.
God, I saw the first movie and it was okay, but I did see that they're doing the TV series, right?
Yeah, the BBC, the actual BBC, not BBC America, is doing the entire like trilogy run. It's like a mini series. I think it's an 8-episode.
Okay, that makes me so happy to see. Like that more and more series are being opted for TV instead of film. I think that's such a great idea.
Yeah, well, it's just like we talked about before, TV and books have a stronger similarity because of the long format structure of it. It makes much more sense.
I think they're doing this as TV because it has a smaller budget. And they could probably get away. Well, they could get away with it more easily than trying to launch a free film franchise, which did not work out so well.
Yeah. There's less pressure to kind of go over the top, which is in a way is good as well, because I remember that was something that really annoyed me with some of like the later Harry Potter films, was that it was like, okay, you took a moment that was supposed to be like an intelligent conversation and turned it into some ridiculous action scene that makes no sense. And it's like just that pressure to like make this longer format.
Following the later Harry Potter films, you really needed to be familiar with the book.
Yeah.
There's all this dialogue. Get somebody shooting magic in there.
Yeah. And that's, so in a way, the limitation that TV has as far as budget can work out to its advantage, because it can take away that that feeling of necessity, like we need to have like a huge action scene, and you can say, well, no, we really don't, because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
So in a way, that can work out to its advantage as well. So I mean, that's kind of cool. It's always cool to see that, just with book properties coming to TV in general is really cool. But, more fantasy series coming to TV. We've been talking about this. The Kingkiller Chronicles coming probably to Starz, because there's a rumor now that Lionsgate and Starz are going to merge, and it was Lionsgate that acquired the rights, and that would make sense. As like Starz saying, we need a Game of Thrones competitor,
Right.
So,
of course.
So yeah, it's exciting to see, more and more of these coming out. We're just going to get eventually to the point where we're getting everything, Through some service or another, every book we've ever loved is going to be a TV series.
There are plenty I would love to see adapted, so if they start doing this even more and more, I'm going to start putting in votes as to what I would like to see adapted.
So, in another remake, did either of you watch the classic NBC anthology series Amazing Stories back in the 80s? It was a Steven Spielberg produced.
Oh, yeah. I saw several of those, definitely.
No.
Well, that series, it's an anthology series where every episode is its self-contained story. It had a bunch of big directors.
I remember the one with, like, the old folks' home, where, like this boy comes in or something, and they turns them all into kids for the evening or something.
Yeah, I think that was Amazing Stories. There's a
Amazing.
Twilight Zone episode that was like that, too, so I'm kind of...
Oh, okay, well, it's like that meme. Twilight Zone did it.
But I remember there was one about like a pilot in like World War II. Yeah, I'd have to brush up on my Amazing Stories. But the exciting thing here is that the person running this remake is Brian Fuller. So of course, we've talked before. I'm a huge fan of Brian Fuller. Willis as well. Hannibal, amazing. I also love Pushing Daisies and Wonderfalls, of all of them. So anytime Brian Fuller is attached to something, I let out a little giddy squeal. So this is exciting, and it's kind of cool. It's a chance to kind of explore these kind of like little one-off stories that are, now with the way TV is, we can really get like much deeper, larger, bigger experiences from things like this. So it'd be really cool to see what they pull off with it. So plus we've had a lot of anthology TV recently, but not much of it is like episodic anthology. Usually it's like seasonal anthologies, like American Horror Story or Fargo.
Yeah. There are seasonal long form stories, whereas stuff like Amazing Stories was just episodic. It was just a little short tale every episode.
I think the closest thing we've had to this recently is Black Mirror, which is, hits that as well, where it's kind of like a Twilight Zone-esque,
right, it's
each
the
episode
closest thing we have now. But now I think they're starting to make a comeback now. There were several of them back in the day. There was Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, was that type of show, and those were all like spin-offs of Twilight Zone,
Yeah.
So, they're
spiritual successors or followers.
Just people trying to recreate that magic. That was that show. That's how influential the Twilight Zone was. It's just, if you could say, like, the Twilight Zone is probably one of the most influential pieces of pop culture in existence.
Yeah. Definitely, and a lot of the kind of creators right now that we're big fans of were hugely influenced by Twilight Zone. I know, like, David Lindelof and Carlton Cuse would frequently talk about the inspiration from the Twilight Zone on Lost.
Right.
So yeah, it's something that you see a lot of. So it's cool to see that kind of stuff coming back. Maybe this will inspire the next Lindelof and Cuse to make the next Lost.
Yeah, right.
That'd be cool.
Okay,
I just want to say, speaking of Brian Fuller, I don't remember if this was brought up last week or if you were going to bring it up this week, but there was confirmation from CBS that they're developing a Star Trek TV series, and I saw someone recommend that they have the showrunners for it be Brian Fuller and Ron Moore, which I would so get behind. Like, get rid of Robert Orsai, get rid of Alex Kurtzman, get rid of all of their associated people. Ron Moore and Brian Fuller sounds fantastic.
Both wrote on Star Trek before, so yeah.
Exactly.
Both wrote, I believe, on Voyager and Deep Space Nine. I think they both wrote on both.
Brian Fuller only did Voyager, but Ron Moore did TNG, DS9, and Voyager.
I gotta find out which episodes of Voyager were like Brian Fuller, so I could evaluate them. Because I don't know. I watched like pretty much all of Voyager, and it all seems the same to me. I'm sure there were.
I've heard from people that have gone back and rewatched Voyager that it's much better on a new view. That like a lot of the kind of complaints that Voyager had against it really connect back to just the idea of we were Star Trek'd out at the time. We had too much Star Trek. It was like all over the place.
Really flailed and died because it's like, do we really need more at this point?
Yeah.
So
And
what-
also DS9 reached such heights that everything came after was never going to be able to compete with it.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I liked Voyager okay. I liked Enterprise better than Voyager. I thought Enterprise was alright for what they were trying to do. I didn't have like any major problems. Voyager is probably the worst Trek series ever made. I will give them that.
Deep Space Nine is the best. My
Deep
opinion.
Space Nine is the best. But what's your take on this new Star Trek series? What are your hopes and dreams for it?
Well, my
basically?
hopes and dreams that are probably not going to happen, but I'm still going to hope anyway, is that it's something that takes place in the Prime universe. At some point, if it was immediately after the Dominion War, there's a lot of rich stuff they could explore that. Or if they even wanted to jump like 50 or 100 years in the future, I'm sure there's a lot they could do.
Right.
I'm not at all interested in the new universe stuff.
Thank you. That's exactly my opinion.
Not in the slightest. It's shiny. It's boring. It's
Oh,
probably
it's
just
so
going to be a
boring.
rehash of storylines and characters, whereas Prime Universe has a lot more potential.
Yeah, there's a lot more going on in the current Prime universe than there is in this other pseudo original Star Trek universe that they have set up in these films. And it's like, I just want this to take place in the Prime universe sometime after Voyager, where the Federation is in turmoil from the Dominion War. And all the consequences from that, how's that affect the status quo?
Right.
Especially now, and if we're continuing on from the continuity from the first movie, then oh god, the Romulan home planet Romulus is destroyed.
Yeah, Romulus was destroyed and Spock kind of died. Those are major things they could totally explore.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. And so
what's interesting about this story, besides just the fact that it's Star Trek coming back to TV, which is huge, is that the way it's coming back. This is going to be on CBS, the first episode. The rest of the season and series, if it continues beyond the season, is going to be on their streaming platform.
So weird.
I know.
And basically, who in their right minds would pay for a CBS streaming platform when you can get CBS not even just through cable, but just if you have an antenna. You can just put up an antenna and get CBS. So why would you pay for CBS platform? Maybe this is the answer. Just consider it the Star Trek subscription.
It better be a dang amazing pilot then.
Hey, they're putting that first episode on CBS, so if they're going to
and if it's not amazing, if it's bad, then my response is going to be, meh. Maybe sometime down the line I'll make its way to Netflix or something and I'll give it a try then. But then that pilot really needs to be amazing. And it needs to not be made by anyone who is in any way connected to J.J. Abrams.
See, and I love J.J. Abrams, but I understand the Trek fans. That's not who you want in charge of Star Trek. That's who you want in charge of Star Wars, and that's why he's in charge of Star Wars now. But that's not who you want in charge of Star Trek.
Oh,
you
yeah.
want somebody that's a bit headier, that's a bit more philosophical involved in Trek.
Exactly. Star Trek is supposed to be philosophical. So I hope it gets back to its roots, which was more about moral complexities and ideas and exploration and discovery, but also then maybe could adopt a few more of the ideas that television has evolved, more complex storytelling and bigger casts and things like that.
So this is slightly off topic. It's off topic for the entirety of what we cover, but it's on topic because it's related to Star Trek a little bit. And that's did you guys hear that now, I think it was a naval scientist or military scientist have figured out how to make transparent aluminum, which was something that has been referenced in Star Trek. It's real. It's real. Transparent aluminum is real.
Are we sure that he figured it out himself, or did he just get the formula from some time traveler?
We don't know. It was left behind on a Mac 2 or something. Apple II, yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, we got transparent aluminum, so that's crazy. But off topic, obviously, we're not a science podcast. So I just thought that was cool to bring up.
That is cool.
That brings us to an end of the news. Now we're going to move on to the shows we've been watching. So let's start off here with Scream Queens. Now, Will, are you up to date on Scream Queens?
Yes.
So this last episode opened with like the most hilarious line, if you've watched the rest of the episodes ever, which was, "My problem is that I'm too nice."
Oh yeah. Right, yeah. My problem is that I'm too nice. And then she talks about the murdered Chanel's, like, you know, her funeral, but she talks about her in like the worst way possible throughout the whole thing. It's like I'm glad you're rotting in hell.
We also finally got it to see Jamie Lee Curtis really shine. When you have an actress that big in a show like this, it's kind of like you're waiting for that. Like, well, when are we going to get our Jamie Lee Curtis moment, you know? And so we finally got that, which was great.
Yeah, this was Jamie Lee Curtis's episode. Even though this episode did feel kind of like a filler episode, because nothing happened that really advanced the plot too much. We just got this new character in there, and then we got like to see like Jamie Lee Curtis, like her manipulations, dealing with this new character, and it's like, but it was really fun to watch. I can say that, and there was like some really funny lines in this one too. Like there was like, oh my God, Ariana Grande, like when Emma Roberts' character, Chanel No. 1, was like having the dream with Ariana Grande's ghost, and she was like, "How's hell?" And she's like, "Oh my God, when I first got," she said like, "Are there dinosaurs in hell?" And she's like, "No." She's like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, that's what I said when I first got to hell. I was like, where are all the dinosaurs?" And they're like, "We know, Jesus broke in and stole them."
Yeah. Their explanation of hell was pretty hilarious throughout.
Oh my God. Being motorboated by Hitler. Oh my word. And then like Chad in bed with the goat. And he was like, "Oh no,
I'm lactose intolerant."
He called the goat a non-human helper companion.
Yeah, so Scream Queens continues to be great absurdist comedy. Much better than I expected. Much better than I'd hoped.
Yeah, way much better than I ever expected or hoped.
So yeah, it continues to be really good. Let's move on then to Doctor Who. So Kat, what have you thought about? We talked before about the first episode with Maisie Williams in it. So we got the second episode, and we got to see kind of how she might play into a larger picture. And we also got the first episode of what seems to be another two-parter. So this is like the season of two-parters, I guess?
So cool. I like that. Yeah, it's like the I don't know, that I might need to rewatch The Woman Who Lived again, because I literally got to the end of the episode and I was watching it with my sister and I was like, I barely understand what's going on, and I've never had so much trouble with the accents before. So I missed about a third of that episode because I was having a hard time following the plot. But the stuff that I really liked was the way it discussed immortality. Like, I thought that was just absolutely amazing, the way she and the doctor described what it was really like just to constantly be outliving everyone. And then his explanation for why they couldn't travel together, I thought was really, and why he needs a companion, really cool.
Yeah, so that was cool, and we, by the end, we got to kind of see like this transformation in her character from what we'd seen before in the last episode to what we see in this episode, and to what we see how she is when she kind of finds a purpose.
Yeah, Yeah.
So
Sure.
yeah, it was a fun series of episodes. I really hope we see more of her throughout the season.
I can't imagine they won't. Like, I think it's cool that they found yet another character that they can use as recurring, right? And found a unique way to have her recurring that's distinctive from like Jack Harkness in River's Song.
Yeah, so it's definitely cool. So I mean, it's also, I mean, we used to get. With the companions, we'd get like, members of their family or something would be drawn in little bits, like family and old friends and stuff. And we kind of had that with Clara, with not like somebody that she knew before, but with the boyfriend she made. But of course that didn't, go so well.
Yeah.
And so now she's been kind of by herself. But they have been introducing little bits here and there where they'll talk about, I had a student and she took a selfie with me to thank you for helping her with this thing.
Yeah.
Which are kind of cute little moments, but I mean, it's nice to have another kind of strong character to relate to these two.
Yeah. And actually, if they wanted, I mean, I guess it depends on how Clara leaves the show, but I mean, technically Clara could keep showing up as well.
Yeah.
Because she's the
Well, it depends. Yeah, like you said, depends on how she leaves the show.
All along. And actually, I went to a con with her about a month ago. She was asked about that, and her response was, just wait and see how she leaves the show. She wouldn't give any more information about
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you leave the way that, Rose left, there leaves openings to come back, and Rose came back, If you leave the way that Martha left, there's openings to come back, and, she came back. If you leave the way that, Amy Pond left, there's not much room to come back. So it all kind of depends on how they do it,
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah. So what did you think of the most recent episode?
I saw the Clara twist coming about a minute before it happened, and then in retrospect, I was like, I have to rethink this whole episode now, because only then did I start to realize how much she had been manipulating things. Quite disturbing. It's because there's this whole, like, I don't know, it's because basically you can't trust that anyone is really themselves now. So, yeah. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Yeah, definitely. I'm continue to be excited about Doctor Who. It's something we'll bring up every couple of weeks, because I don't know if there's much point in talking about it every week. But every couple of weeks we'll check back in and see what we're doing. Will, have you watched any more Doctor Who? I know the fall season's on, so you probably haven't, but...
Not yet. My plate is unfortunately full right now.
Yeah.
It's just like with everything else happening.
Yeah, you're kind of like with Doctor Who how I am with Once Upon a Time. It's on the back burner. I got other stuff I need to get through. When I catch up and I go, oh, I need to watch something else. Oh, Once Upon a Time.
Yeah.
It's going to be that way with you for Doctor Who, I guess. So yeah, tell us when you watch some more so we can talk about that again.
Okay, sure.
Now let's move on. Will, you watched the first episode of Fargo. Now I'm of the new season of Fargo. I'm caught up with what's currently out on Fargo, so I've seen past there, but you've just seen the first one so far. What do you think so far?
Love it. I absolutely love it. This is great. The way this episode opened was just totally amazing, and I got like so giddy for a second because I thought we were going to like see Bruce Campbell like up front, like right at the beginning of the show, but that didn't happen. I was like,
so I'll tell you, I think I'm like 4 episodes in now. He's still not there.
Oh, okay.
They keep hinting at him. They keep laying these moments. Like they keep, they showed a flashback from like the 50s, and so they were at like, a movie that and it said Ronald Reagan in, and it had like, and they'd gone to like a movie theater. So they keep dropping these like clues that Reagan's going to be, a part of the season, and they haven't delivered on anything yet. So I'm wondering if it's going to be like a really monumental thing, or if it's just going to be kind of like a cultural, like this is 1979 kind of thing.
Right. Maybe.
What would be crazy is if they did something like they killed him, and then like, you're like, okay, so Fargo doesn't take place in our same reality.
Well, yeah, right. Well, so much for it being a true story, I guess.
But that would be really crazy if they did something that really like vastly diverged from like our current history.
That would be totally crazy.
That's what I keep thinking, because they keep, hinting at the fact that Reagan's going to be in this, and they still haven't shown him yet. I'm like, God, I wonder how significant his role in this is going to be, the way they're presenting it. Or if it's just going to be like, he just comes through town and that's it. And it's just like this really small thing that we've all hyped up because we were expecting it to be big. Either way, there's a lot of room. But yeah, what do you think of the characters in this season? You got to see the Gerhardt crime family.
Yeah, the Gerhardt crime family.
Led by Saul Ty from Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Not too much is known about them yet. I know Bruce Campbell's co-star on Burn Notice,
Jeffrey Donovan,
Jeffrey Donovan, that's the guy's name, is the main, is the oldest brother of that crime family now. And, there's two other guys. There's, the other guy, and then there's the youngest, played by Kieran Culkin, who is pretty much the focal character of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Although he is not going to be a character in the rest of the show.
Great performance, though. He's a total. Every time you have a big kind of scary organized crime type family, you have to have that character that's just a total fuck up. Yeah. Everybody else has to cover for and pulls them into some horrible situation, and that's kind of what you have in part with his character.
Yeah, he is the total fuck up, and basically the whole episode is about him. He knows he's a fuck up. He's trying to prove himself because he wants to be a big shot in his own family, pretty much, because his own family doesn't take him seriously. And so he sets about this scheme where they want to sell typewriters, but there's this court case, and they need this judge to, basically rule in their favor. And so he goes about to convince this judge. He follows her to a diner, and she's not going to take any of his shit. And basically that ends in the most violent way possible.
That was a great sequence, the whole thing. Just the moment he first pulled out the gun and her kind of oh shit, and then just the horrible way things just went down in the worst way possible on every corner. Every turn it took was led to a worse path than it was already on.
Yeah, every turn it just got worse and worse.
And then the biggest what the fuck moment in the series of Fargo, when he's outside and is distracted by a UFO.
When he's outside, he's just finished murdering the waitress, and then he sees a UFO.
which has had no other play. This isn't a show about that. It's just something he saw that distracted him and then basically caused him to get hit by a car.
Yeah, distracted him.
It came out of nowhere. It has never been referenced again. It's just the weirdest thing,
Right. And then he gets hit by the car, which the car turns out to belong to Kirsten Dunst, and she ran over this guy, and she doesn't know what to do now because she doesn't want to, go to jail for a hit and run. So she thinks she's killed this guy, and so she just parks her car in her garage with him still in the window, and she gets up and she makes dinner for her husband and her. And, and they act like everything's normal until he wakes up and he starts banging, on the wall or something.
He's just out of it and violent at that point.
He's out of it and violent.
He doesn't have his mental capacity going for him. He's just violent and out of it, yeah.
And her husband discovers it, and, her husband discovers him, and he attacks her husband, or her husband ends up killing him. Yeah. And
having to, basically.
Basically forced to, self-defense. And then he's like, oh, we gotta go to the cops, and she's convincing him, no, that's not a good idea, we totally can't go to the cops with this, And so he's
kind of the Nygaard of this season, where last season we had, but it's a very different take on the type of character, whereas this guy's kind of an unassuming character that ends up getting pulled into a really dark situation, where Nygaard ended up kind of thriving under the pressure and becoming a horrible, horrible person. This guy is, he's kind of like, getting pulled further and deeper into it against his will. Like, he doesn't want to be doing any of this. It's not like Nygaard, who's getting off on it a little bit. Like, he's kind of like, oh, crap. Like,
yeah.
More of this? Oh, man.
Man. Yeah, more of this? What?
So you kind of feel bad for him throughout the whole thing. Unlike Nygaard, you were kind of like, okay, yeah, he needs to go. Yeah, he's become a monster. It's not like that. So it's interesting watching as the season develops with that. But yeah, are you excited to watch more? Are you gonna try to find a way to watch more?
I'm already down. I already bought the second episode on iTunes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I definitely think it improves episode to episode. So, like, I watched the last episode and I was just thinking, the first episode of the season I really liked, but like I felt like a little bit, I wasn't connecting with the characters as much as I would have liked to. And now I'm like so invested, like way more so than I was on the first season.
And also, like Luz Halverson, you got to see him, his younger self and his family, and you find out like his wife has cancer, and that's why she's not around in like the present timeline. And and he got that, and also like a good performance from Patrick Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Who actually Patrick Wilson was in the first season, right? Wasn't he? No,
I don't think so.
No. Because I was thinking of Lester Nygaard's brother, the guy, and that wasn't him. Although he sort of resembled Patrick Wilson.
Yeah, similar look.
yeah, similar look. Yeah.
Yeah. And he has great chemistry with Ted Danson's character on the show. So the two of them kind of going back and forth
you'll notice here, like unlike other anthology TV shows, there are no reoccurring actors so far in the season. This is
connected, so it's a little bit different in that.
Right. But usually, they just recast the same actors in different roles.
Yeah, like with American Horror Story.
Yeah, with American Horror Story, because presumably that's cheaper and easier to do for them but it looks like...
I don't know if it's cheaper. They have like these huge name actors in it now.
Yeah.
American Horror Story has like Kathy Bates and, I can't think of his name. Vic Mackey from The Shield, what's his name? The Commish and Thing from the first Fantastic Four movie. I can't think of the actor's name, but yeah, he's in it, and so they got all these big name actors in it now. But yeah, so I hope you enjoy more of that. So you're gonna have to let me know what you think as you're watching more.
Yes, I will. And I can't wait for Bruce Campbell to show up as Ronald Reagan, especially after watching Ash vs. Evil Dead. I am all up for more Bruce Campbell. And
seeing Jeffrey Donovan makes you want to see more Bruce too, just because you're used to seeing them together. So
right, and Burn Notice, Jeffrey Donovan's character definitely has to interact with Ronald Reagan in this season.
So let's talk about you wanted to talk about Supernatural. You've been watching that, and you just got to the episode now. You're watching the last season, which I believe is season 10.
Yes.
And you just got to the episode where Charlie comes back from Oz. Yes. So tell me what you think of that episode.
I really liked it. I thought it was a pretty fun episode. It begins like where Charlie is beating this guy up, basically torturing him, and like totally not being Charlie at all. And like Sam and Dean are also like, they find out and they're like, well, this is Charlie. Turns out
Charlie, by the way, let me say real quick, played by Felicia Day.
Yes, played by Felicia Day. So basically their reaction is, this isn't her. Technically it is her and it isn't her, because apparently while Charlie was in Oz, the wizard separated her good half and her bad half into two separate entities. So,
in a very Once Upon a Time-esque storyline.
In a very Once Upon a Time-esque storyline, yeah. It's a very fairy-tale storyline. Yeah, in fact, the whole Oz thing is like kind of a weird direction for Supernatural to go in.
Yeah.
But it works.
I like that all you see of Oz is like some characters that return to Earth from it, and then you see like through a doorway one time.
Yeah,
that, like they keep it like I really hope they don't ever like go to Oz in Supernatural. I like that it's like this kind of like thing that's like, it's kind of crazy and really, high fantasy, much more so than you'd expect on like Supernatural, but it's like on the fringe, like on the outside, so it doesn't disrupt the tone.
Right. And basically, all the stuff Charlie was describing was like all this crazy crap that is like too crazy for Supernatural, It's not like
except for like a Trickster episode or something.
Yeah, like a Trickster episode or something, and it was like just all this high fantasy stuff. But yeah, basically the crux of the episode is Sam and Dean are trying to figure out a way to get to Oz or to get to the wizard so that they could reunite Charlie into one being again, instead of having this bad Charlie running around beating people up and murdering people. That is a problem. So to that end, they find a member of the Men of Letters who had actually gone to Oz and came back. And it turned out the same thing happened to him, and this was a twist. The same thing happened to him, but his evil alter ego became the Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
And they find out, they're connected. So if you do something to one, then it affects the other one. So he basically tells them, well, if I mortally wound myself, then the wizard has to come here and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they find out, so that's loophole, because they don't have a way to get back to Oz, but they have a way to get the wizard to come to them so that they can basically fix Charlie without having to go to Oz, which is what happens, and, then everything's okay.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you've been enjoying season 10. I feel it's like an improvement over the last two seasons before.
It really is. I'm really liking the whole storyline with Crowley and his mother. This witch, Rowena, that's pretty fun. Their interactions are just hilarious. it's like
I'm always down for more Mark Sheppard on TV.
Yeah, Mark Sheppard. He's like you said you'd be back in a flash when I was 8. It's been 300 years. He never came back.
Yeah, so there's a lot more of that for you, even going into this season. So, yeah, catch up, man. Catch up.
Yeah, definitely. I am.
So, I had it originally scheduled. I was going to talk about Ash vs. Evil Dead next, but I feel I need to put in Once Upon a Time first, just because Kat's been kind of sitting around doing nothing. So, I'm going to give you two a chance to talk about Once Upon a Time, and I'm just going to kind of tune out a little bit.
Kat didn't have anything to say during the Supernatural. You watched Supernatural, right?
Yeah, but not since 6th season. I kind of...
okay, so you kind of dropped it.
Yeah, so I still know all the characters and everything. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I got really tired of all the arguments about their codependent relationship before one of them dies and goes to hell/purgatory at the end of the season and then is brought back and it suffers enormous trauma and it just, it's also like cyclical. I just can't do it anymore.
Oh yeah, it's heavy-handed on that.
Dean's keeping secrets from Sam. Sam runs away from Dean again.
And now Laurel's keeping secrets from Sam and Dean.
Yeah. To be fair, this season they make fun of that a lot. This season,
I don't know that makes me feel any better because I still feel like they just should have ended about 4 years ago.
They've had several characters this season make very sarcastic references to the Dean and Sam drama.
Yeah, well, now, they're on season 11, and the main storyline wrapped it with season 5, so there's more non-main storyline seasons than there are main storylines.
But anyway, Once Upon a Time, so, Kat, I'll let you lead off with this.
I think I'm starting to pull away from the show. The episode that aired, not this last time, but the week before, just absolutely infuriated me, and to me, I think it boiled down a lot of my fundamental issues with the show. Also, the Dark Swan plotline has just been so enormously disappointing. It's so
she's basically done nothing, and it's like, oh my word, oh my god. And so basically, turning Rumpelstiltskin into a hero basically meant having him stand up to a giant bear.
This show is just too stupid sometimes. It's just too stupid. Stupid can be fun, but I think in this case it's just stupid.
Well, this is boring. What should have been a fun villain turns out to be a boring villain. And I like...
I mean, at the end of the season premiere, Emma says, you're all about to be punished for what you did in Camelot. And she hasn't done anything. I thought after that we would go around and see her tormenting everybody, and she hasn't done anything.
Thinking, maybe now that she has Excalibur, maybe it will get interesting. I don't know.
I think one of the reasons why I just don't think I can take the show anymore is the show has an almost offensively simplistic interpretations of hero and villain. Like,
right.
To the point that I find it enormously disturbing. Because
I thought they were going in a direction that, they seem to be hinting that they were going in a direction that heroes and villains were more complex, and that it wasn't. Yeah, but it doesn't seem like they're fully committing to that.
Well, I think the thing is, the writers just aren't that good. They're just not good enough for that kind of complexity, and yet they continue to present quote-unquote heroes and villains, even though I find their interpretations of it really troubling, because I think my biggest problem with it is basically in this world, it's whether or not you're a hero or a villain is something that's created by circumstances outside of you, and it's something, it's static. You just are a hero because you are just that way. And all of your actions thereby are seen as good because you're a hero or as bad because you're a villain, rather than the other way around. Which is, I think, been my biggest issue with the way they've treated the Dark Swan plotline, aside from the fact that Dark Swan's been really boring and has barely done anything, is that everybody already, in the minds of everybody, she's already a villain. And so everything she does is villainous. Even the things that she does that aren't villainous, while she might do the exact same thing that Regina was doing last season, and it's reprehensible in the eyes of the other characters, whereas Regina, it was okay because Regina is a hero. Stealing people's hearts and controlling them. I mean, Regina was doing that last season, and she is not getting any condemnation for that. It's appalling the way this show, it's such a terrible, terrible way to present heroism and villainy. I find it utterly infuriating.
The only thing saving this season for me is the King Arthur Camelot plot, because I think what they are doing with King Arthur is interesting, and I think unlike what they're doing with Regina, I think he is a more interesting villain just because he's a villain by the fact that he thinks he's doing what is the most righteous thing, and he's not afraid to do bad things to achieve his end, which he believes is righteous and good. So he believes himself to be a hero, and he's doing all these bad villain things,
Yeah, definitely. Whereas so many of their villains, it just seem to be evil for evil's sake. And there is, I think Lana Parrilla is great in the role, but there is a lot of tendency from Regina to blame everybody else for all of her problems, and then do terrible things.
Constantly.
It was really, really messed up in that episode. I think it was the second or third episode of this season where what's his name tried to kill Regina because she once slaughtered his family. And everyone came down on the side of Regina, and it's I'm sorry, what? No, he was justified in that. But because she's a hero, then everything she does is good, right? Even it extends even retroactively, and therefore he was in the wrong, even though he was the one that was wronged by Regina. The show's sense of morality is so messed up. Oh, I was so excited for this plotline going in, but now I just don't know that I can take it.
Oh, it's one of those things that sounds so exciting on paper, but then they just botch it. It's like with Supernatural and with when they decide to make Dean a demon, and then they didn't do anything with that. It lasted 3 episodes, and then they cured him, and he didn't really do anything in those 3 episodes anyway.
Boring.
And it's yeah, it's boring. It's like, oh, if you're gonna do like these type things, like commit to it, and make it fun, and
Right?
yeah.
Like in retrospect, I guess I shouldn't be surprised because this is very much in keeping with the series. Like this series very consistently will have set up the half-long season arc where they have an obvious end goal, and in the process of getting there, they have no idea how to actually like develop story that adds towards getting there, so they just go off on a bunch of tangents into the mid-season finale or actual season finale.
Yeah.
And it's always had this really simplistic view of heroes and villains. I think this has just allowed me to better actualize why I think it's so terrible. Like, and I was hoping the whole thing would be more character driven, and it's incredibly not. And I realized in retrospect, I was expecting something of the show that it is very much not. It is not character driven. It is not relationship driven. It's here's our exciting new unrelated tangent plot character of the week that we're going to go off and tell the backstory of Merida, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with Camelot or Dark Swan. Like it's so typical of it.
Right.
So I have a theory. And this is my theory. You had stopped watching Once Upon a Time because you were having probably similar issues to what you're having now.
Yeah.
But then you enjoyed it when you went back and watched it. Maybe this is a series that you need to binge.
That is
Maybe when you're binging it, like, part of your brain shuts down just because you're enjoying the ride. And so that you just kind of let things slide off, or like things that you're like, why aren't they doing anything yet? Well, you can wait like 6 episodes because you're binging it.
Yeah, and
Right.
you get a better
Waiting
sense
for the next
of...
week.
Yeah, I agree. And you get a better sense of where something is going when you don't have to wait 3 weeks, to see all the stuff in between. So that's not an unreasonable assumption to make. I still think the show is incredibly silly. I think in the past it's been fun, but right now I'm just kind of feeling like it's just too stupid for its own good.
I'm so early in the second season, there's already, tons of stuff that, even, especially in the first season, that I was like, wow, this is just kind of weird, I think I've mentioned it before, the idea of, the way they play on the idea of, adopted parents and stuff, and kind of the kind of stuff Emma was getting away with, that people in the town were like, oh yeah, that's fine, that you just kind of hijacked this kid's life even though you gave him up for adoption, That's perfectly fine, attitude.
I mean, if you start thinking about any of the what should be morally complicated systems of any of this stuff, you're already overthinking them.
Yeah, exactly. This show is a black and white show. They wear it on their sleeve. The main themes of this are good and evil, and love conquers all. Is basically the main themes of Once Upon a Time, and that's the stuff that they're just constantly hammering home.
If there's one thing that I wish,
adoption is evil.
In tackling the Dark One storyline for Emma, the Dark Swan storyline, if there's one source I wish that they'd taken inspiration from, it's Dark Willow from Buffy.
Yes.
Dark Willow was fun. It was very much predicated upon the character. It came from a great source of her continual characterization. And so she was kind of tragic and fun and evil and going around causing lots of destruction while her friend struggled with, can she still be saved, while also trying to deal with all the destruction she was causing. That is how I wish they'd handled it, is way more proactive on all fronts and character focused. But that is not Once Upon a Time.
You're comparing Joss Whedon to Once Upon a Time now. So.
Yeah,
I know. High bar, and Once Upon a Time is just, yeah.
We just need to get Brian Fuller to write Once Upon a Time.
He'd probably actually do really well on something like that. He did really well. Pushing Daisies had this really light, beautiful kind of picturesque looking kind of show with really kind of, cutesy kind of stuff going on, similar to what I've experienced in Once Upon a Time. And yet was also doing some subversive things that were interesting.
Right.
So yeah, I could see him doing well on something like that.
Cool.
But I could see him doing well on anything.
Okay, if they're going to continue Once Upon a Time, I think this will never happen in a million years. But wouldn't it be amazing if ABC just said, okay, Edward Kitson and Adam Horowitz, you had a good run, but we're kicking you off as showrunners and we're bringing in Brian Fuller.
Yeah, right.
The scripts would be like 4 times as long, just with the dense amount of dialogue he packs in.
But think of the complexities the show would suddenly have.
You're just going like really surreal directions that you. A 3-minute like kaleidoscopic scene that just like you're like, what the hell? Let's move on then from Once Upon a Time. Seems like you're kind of hitting your limit on it. If you do end up quitting on it this season, remember you might want to try binging it when it hits Netflix.
That's actually my plan. Is I'm probably going to save up all the episodes on my DVR.
That's our way, yeah.
To come back and just watch a whole bunch of them in one go and see if I find it more palatable.
That'd be a kind of interesting experiment to try out.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have one more show to talk about before we kind of just get to what's coming up next week, and that is the show I have been anticipating all month. I know Will was too. Will was disappointed he wasn't able to watch it because he doesn't have Starz, and Starz doesn't have a really good cord-cutting option. It's not like Showtime or HBO where you can just buy a subscription. You have to do it as part of your cable package, which means you have to buy a bunch of other crap you don't want. But I was able to find a legitimate stream that they put out for the first episode only that Starz made available, and I said, Will, you need to watch this so we can talk about this on the podcast. And he did, and so now we're going to talk about Ash vs. Evil Dead. So, what did you think, Will?
Awesome. Pretty much, this is exactly what I imagined it would be based off of, what was shown in the trailer, what was discussed. This is Evil Dead. It's back. What can I really say about the beginning was like really creepy with like the cops, and she was like going into like that house, which was apparent, and then the Deadites attack, and that was such an amazing sequence, and
the body turning like backwards.
Classic Evil Dead. Classic Evil Dead.
Yeah. Like so absurdly grotesque, like in a way that like, you could have just had the character turn around, but no, you have the character, instead of turning around, just rotates her head around and folds her arms around and starts walking backwards. It's like, yeah, that's Evil Dead. You just push it past that limit,
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's like, well, just turning around is boring.
Yeah.
It's a boring way, and it's actually better that they do because it's more unsettling too.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. So that was a great sequence. And then of course Bruce Campbell's Ash crushed it.
Such a jerk.
I know, right? He's like,
when he went and hit on that girl after he knew the guy like had a crush on her.
Yeah, I know,
he just walks up and starts hitting on her like right in front of him. I was like, what a jerk.
I know, right?
But it's so hilarious as a jerk. It's great.
He's such a hilarious jerk. Oh my word. Oh yeah. And of course they get sucked into his like all he wants to do is he just wants to get out of there. When he learns that the Deadites are back and what he's done, all he wants to do is just get out of there, get as far away from that place as possible. But then he realizes, by the end of the episode, he realizes he has to step up and he has to fight these things.
Less because he has any responsibility and more because he can't get away.
Yeah, pretty much. Just because he can't escape, basically. There was another great sequence where he goes to the place he works, to the store, to get his check, and his boss tells him he can't have his check till the end of the day, hands him this big box of light bulbs that says don't break them, and the first thing he does is he drops them all on the floor and breaks them, and then he's freaking out and he's stepping on them, breaking more of them.
Very Three Stooges-esque, which is, if you know anything about Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and the whole thing, they're really big Three Stooges fans, and they bring that kind of element into their horror. Which is one of the kind of unique, things about their style with it. One of the things I was cracking up with the light bulb scene was I was like, who still stocks like those old light bulbs?
Oh yeah, right.
Isn't everybody just stocking the energy savers now? You never see those old round light bulbs anymore. Like I
still see the old round light bulbs.
Oh, you do? Okay. I'm like, why would they have a big box of those? Like a.
No, they still make them. They still stock them. And of course, when Ash gets attacked by the deadite possessed toy doll.
that was like Alice in Wonderland, or not Alice in Wonderland. The Great Wizard of Oz that Rami did had like a little doll character, so it's kind of like almost like a tease at that, I think.
That was something that's straight out of Army of Darkness, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
the little ashes.
Yeah, like the little ashes. Yeah, exactly.
I think what was one of the things that was really interesting about this, and like I was kind of, it's in many ways this is Evil Dead. It has that feel, but at the same time, it's completely different. Like if you actually think like event to event and what's happening in it and the kind of settings of things, it's completely different than anything we've ever seen in the Evil Dead movie. But that's part of what makes it Evil Dead, because every Evil Dead movie is so incredibly different from the one before.
Right.
I mean, the first one's like a straight up horror. The second one's like this weird horror slapstick comedy. And the third one is like a swords and sorcery, like action comedy series. It's like completely different, So it's having these kind of like, these more modern settings. They're outside of, they're not in a cabin, They're not. There's like they're showing the evil as it hits, a convenience store. So it's like that kind of aspect of it is. That is very Evil Dead to do, to like take it to not be what you expect, in the sense of, we haven't seen a cabin in the woods yet. The way the first episode ends, it seems like that might be where they're going.
Right.
But it was cool just the fact that it was so different and yet it felt exactly the same.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It felt exactly the same, especially since by the end of the first episode, when Ash totally embraces what he has to do, and he is once again Ashley Williams, the hero of the story that you remember, because he's not quite that at the beginning of the episode, or anything, he's just Ashley Williams
trying to hook up with girls.
Yeah. Ashley Williams, the pathetic loser, trying to,
telling lies about saving children and
hooking up with women in bars, and at the end, that's the Ash, that's the Ash you want to see, and that was really cool. I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. This is on Saturday nights. It's kind of weird, but Starz has been doing that with a few of their shows, having Saturday nights, and we also get that with BBC with Doctor Who on Saturday. So Saturdays is exciting for me, man. I got Doctor Who and Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Nice.
Good time for me. That brings us to an end of the What We're Watching segment, and now we just got to talk about what's coming up in the next week. And honestly, there really isn't all that much. There's one thing that's going to be live. By the time this podcast is up, it will be out, which is Master of None. This is going to be on Netflix. This is a Aziz Ansari comedy. Aziz, of course, from Parks and Recreation. This looks really good. From the trailer I saw from it, I was actually kind of surprised. I didn't know how he'd hold a show himself, because he's so ridiculous as Tom in Parks and Rec that you need other characters to balance like a character like that out. I couldn't imagine watching a Tom only Parks and Rec show. Could you, Kat?
Oh, that would be exhausting.
But this is like a very different vibe from that. So from what I've seen in the trailer, there was like a funny scene in the trailer where he has like a kid that I think it's like his friend's kid or something that he's like taking to a store, and like as he's walking, the kid's like walking in front of him and he's going into the store. The kid's like calling out everyone's races. He's like, Chinese man, black woman. You can see how uncomfortable he uses it. It's just like really funny, but yeah, I've been hearing really good stuff too. So it's not just that the trailer looks good, but early reviews that are coming in, people that have already seen the series are saying it's really funny. that it's Aziz Ansari at his best, and that they do have a good balance. It's not the Tom show.
Personally, I've seen interviews with Aziz Ansari, and it's quite clear he is rather different from Tom.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Are either of you going to check out Master of None?
Maybe not. Probably not.
I'm definitely going to check it out, so I'll tell you guys what I think once I've actually seen some of it myself. But I've been hearing really good things. The only other stuff we have coming out this week is on Sunday we have 2 new shows. One is on Stars, and it's called Flesh and Bone, and this is a ballet drama from one of the top writers on Breaking Bad. I believe she wrote Ozymandias, which was like one of the best episodes of the series as a whole. It was the episode of the last season that everyone loved of the last season of Breaking Bad. She wrote that episode. She wrote the series, and it's a ballet drama. It's about people doing ballet. I guess it's going to be playing off the success of the Black Swan movie. In kind of that vein of like just a real kind of gritty, dark, story that takes place in the world of ballet. Kind of in the same way that I guess, we have Mozart in the Jungle on Amazon Prime, which is like, the world of modern classical music and composers, and how it's actually just a bunch of sex and drugs and competition that's just kind of way out of hand, and the drama between people, and that's what this seems to be, but kind of about ballet. So the concept itself isn't really all that intriguing to me, but just the pedigree of the people behind it is. So it's something I'm going to check out. Of course, I try to kind of check out everything. So do either of you have any interest in Flesh and Bone?
Nah.
No, I saw ads for it, and it reminded me of Whiplash, if I remember correctly. Like, in just sort of the brutal mentor pushing people to their limits.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out. I mean, like I said, this does not seem like something that I would enjoy from concept alone. Like, if I just looked at the trailer, I'd be like, oh, I'm probably not going to watch it. But, I look at the pedigree of the people behind it, and I'm kind of like, I got to give this a shot. This could end up being good. So that's something I'm going to check out. There's also a new show on TNT called Agent X, which is about a special agent, a James Bond-esque spy agent, that works directly for the vice president, that even the president doesn't know the existence of, and his missions. So this is TNT doing their kind of pseudo-drama, not trying to go too serious, not, trying to kind of straddle that weird line of, high concept and, procedural. I don't really have great expectations from this. I might check it out just to see, if it's what it is beyond the premise, but I don't have too much hopes for it. But that's it for this week. We finally got to the point now where pretty much most of what's coming out in the fall season is out. With a few exceptions. I know next week there's a really big show coming on Friday that I know Will's going to be really excited for. And the week after that, there's 2 huge shows dropping on the same day. Both digital series, both where the entire run comes out in one day. One being Jessica Jones and the other being Man in the High Castle. So those are going to be exciting. But yeah, for the most part, we're deep into the fall season, and that huge stream where we had this segment of the podcast would be talking about 15 different shows. Now we're down to talking about 1 to 2, 3. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you everybody for listening to the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will on Twitter at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, TVEnthusiast.com. You can check out our YouTube page, our Facebook page, all that stuff. Just go to our main page. All the links are at the top. You don't have to bother memorizing all the different places you need to go. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Pocket Cast, any podcast client will pretty much find us. You can also check out our back episodes as well as current episodes on YouTube or directly through our main page, which will just have the YouTube link embedded. check out some of the stuff we've written recently. We just did a bunch of content for Halloween, including I did an article about kind of the history of Ash vs. Evil Dead and the Evil Dead movies and how they were put together and stuff. Kat just put up a piece about Quantico and their current what they're trying to kind of play out right now, and her not exactly being too psyched about that. So yeah, you can check out our articles. I know I believe Ed's going to be writing our top 10 list this Tuesday, so he wanted to write one, so he's going to be doing that, I think. And you can see us every week on this. If you notice that we didn't talk about any MCU or Arrowverse shows at all in this podcast, there's a reason for that. We actually do a show that's specifically about those on YouTube. We're going to be doing that again this week, so that should be available on Monday. Until then, thank you everybody for listening. Night.
Night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more